Quilt Doc here. This is an excerpt from our recent episode about half-square triangles. This is just the tutorial about how to make half-square triangles. Now, if you'd like to watch the entire episode, you can click the link below. Enjoy! So this is a half-square triangle. We've all seen these before. There are a lot of ways to make them. The simplest way to make one is to take a square fabric, layer it with another, cut it in half, and sew them back together. With half-square triangles, it's really important to remember that you're dealing with an unstable edge or a bias edge, so be gentle when sewing so you don't distort your pieces. Because it's so easy to distort these pieces, I like to finger press, or if I have a lot to make, I like to use one of these rolling irons before I press. Get all your pieces ready with the dark side on top, gently open them up, making sure that you don't have any tucks. Then you're ready to press it with the roller, then with the iron, then you're ready to cut down to the size you need. Really doing all these steps will ensure that you get the best result. Another way to make half-square triangles is to use a die cutter. Layer your dark fabric on top of your light fabric. This die will precision cut up to 8 layers of fabric at a time. If you're careful when you remove the die from the cutter, you'll have all your fabrics ready to sew. Now, the trick with the die cut half-square triangles is that you have to be very precise with your 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now, unless you're super confident in your precision piecing skills, I would encourage my students to pick a larger size die and then cut them down at the end to the exact size that you need after sewing. Use your roller or finger press and then trim as before. Now, both of these methods are pretty good if you only have a few half-square triangles to make. But depending on your die system or your level of ability, you might end up with a lot of wasted fabric. I usually use pre-cut fabrics to make my half-square triangles. They've already trimmed the fabric to a manageable size, and you can trim down to the size you need when you're finished. I'm going to demonstrate here with 5-inch squares from a charm pack. Grab your straight edge ruler and a friction pen and draw a line corner to corner. We're going to sew a scant 1/4 inch on either side of the line. If you don't want to draw on your fabric, you can use painter's tape. Place your tape a 1/4 inch away from your needle and extend it to the edge of your desk. Then when you're sewing, line up the point of your square with the edge of the tape, and you'll have a perfectly straight 1/4 inch seam. Watch down at the bottom, not up at the needle. Once you've done one side, flip it around and do the other side, keeping your eye down at the bottom instead of watching the needle at the top. This is a real time saver. Then either set your seam with the iron or with the rolling iron, cut between the lines, and you've got 2 half-square triangles for the price of 1. If you don't want to use painter's tape, or if you're just starting out, I often recommend that beginners use the Fons & Porter 1/4 inch ruler. You put the ruler in the corner of your square and draw your line on either side of the ruler. Then you stitch on the lines and cut between the lines. When I make half-square triangles, I usually make a whole bunch of them. So minimizing waste can be really helpful. One way to minimize waste is to use triangle paper. Moda cake mixes and cupcake mixes are triangle papers made for pre-cuts, and there's a whole book of patterns out there to use up those triangles. I participate in half-square triangle swaps, where groups of my friends get together, we also half-square triangles from our scraps, and then we swap them with one another to give our quilts extra scrappy looks. Your local quilt store will have many different brands of triangle paper. Try them all out, see which ones work best for you. They also have these books that have all different ways to use your triangles once you've made them. Usually they're linked to the triangle paper, making the math easy. If you can't find the right size that you're looking for, search online for the half-square triangle unit size that you need. Then it's just as simple as printing out as many as you need for your pattern and get to work. Once you've acquired your triangle papers, you just lay your paper on top of your 2 pieces of fabric, trim the fabric to the size of the paper. Be careful not to cut off your seam allowance. Most papers out there have the allowance marked for you as this one does. Then you're going to pop some pins in. This paper even has pin placement marked for you so that you don't have to stop and pull pins while sewing. Flathead pins work best for this as they don't distort the paper. Then it's as simple as sewing on the dotted line. To make paper removal easier, shorten up your stitch length. I'm using a stitch length of about 2 stitches to the inch. The extra holes perforate the paper, making it easier to remove later. Some triangle paper will have you sew continuously, but others, like this one, requires you to break threads and start again. Just follow the arrows and follow the directions on your paper and you'll be fine. Once you've done all the sewing, remove the pins and then cut on the cut lines with your rotary cutter and ruler. If you don't like using the rotary cutter, you can also cut on the lines with scissors. This is a great way for kids to participate safely, and it's a great way for them to practice sewing on a straight line. Once you've got them all cut, you'll have perfect half-square triangles that don't need any further trimming. Leave the papers on until just before you're ready to sew them into your blocks, as the paper helps to stabilize the bias edge and will prevent any stretching or distortion. Another great way to make a bunch of half-square triangles in a hurry is the Easy 8 method, which starts with 2 squares of any size. They have to be the same size. I'm using 2 layer cake squares in this example. You put them together like this and draw lines from corner to corner. You can also use press lines from corner to corner if you prefer, but the line will be on the inside of the quilt at the end, so it doesn't really matter. After that, sew on either side of the line, then sew on either side of the other line and cut between them. Cut once in the middle, cut again in the middle, and you've got 8 half-square triangles made in one go. There are many specialized rulers you can use to trim them down to size. If you only have a few to make, you can just use your trusty square ruler. Now my pattern calls for 3-inch unfinished half-square triangles. So, place your diagonal line along the fold in your block, the 45-degree line. Find your 3-inch mark and make sure that you have a little block sticking past the 3-inch on both the top and on the bottom. Then make your first cut. Once you've made your first cut, rotate your block 90 degrees. This time, line up your diagonal line first and then put your block exactly on the 3-inch lines, trimming away any excess. You're left with a perfect 3-inch square ready to put into your quilt. Another way to do this is to use the triangle trimmer tool. This is a ruler that gets a lot of use in my studio because it saves 2 steps. Before you open your half-square triangles up, you take this guy, line them up along the seam line where indicated. In my case, that's the 3-inch line, and cut. Then you use the little notches to trim away the dog ears. When you open it up, it's all trimmed and you don't have to turn it. Pretty cool, huh? As you can see, I use painter's tape for everything. Put a piece of painter's tape along the diagonal line of your ruler, the 45-degree line of your ruler. Build it up with several pieces. Now, I'm not being as careful as I would be if I were doing this for real, as you want your tape to be stacked up one piece exactly on top of the other. Once you have a pretty thick line of tape, you're ready to trim. What's nice about the thick tape is that it grabs the fold of your half-square triangle, so you can focus on lining up your block to the measurement that you need for trimming. I find this especially helpful when trimming odd-sized blocks because having the tape bump takes away one of the variables so I can focus on lining up my block exactly to size. You can make an entire quilt out of half-square triangles. I often will take a 10-inch layer cake of print along with a 10-inch layer cake of solid, sew them together into half-square triangles, play around with their placement, and you've got a quilt done in no time. Be sure to follow the Quilt Doc half-square triangle boards on Pinterest. You can make half-square triangle samplers, scrappy quilts from swaps with your friends, or make super-sized half-square triangle blocks for a modern last-minute gift. Throw on a couple of borders and you have an entire top pieced in no time. This quilt I made last year at Christmas was entirely pieced from pre-cuts in about 2 hours.